Hello again, gamers. Welcome back to the Board Game Captain. I'm the Captain, and today I'm going to be reviewing and talking about the Colonial Marines Operations Manual for Alien, the role-playing game. So before I get too into this, I do want to give a big thank you to Free League Publishing for sending me this free copy of the Colonial Marines Operations Manual to read and check out and use and review. Thank you, Free League Publishing. Now, I also want to say I've done a full review of the Alien role-playing game a while back, so if you are not familiar with how the Alien role-playing game works, I will not be going over that in this video, so I'm going to put a link above here to my original review of the Alien role-playing game if you'd like to check that out, and then you can come back and watch this video. And that way, everything I talk about in this video will make a lot more sense, since I'm not going to go over the actual game system in this, because this is specifically about the Colonial Marines Operations Manual, and what's inside of here, and what this is as an expansion to Alien, the role-playing game. So before I get too into this, I do want to say that I've got a ton of links in the description down below that you can check out at your leisure. If you're in a position to and would like to support the channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description down below. There's also a link to my Teespring store where you can get yourself some cool gamer gear, some Board Game Captain merch, t-shirts, mugs, etc. Link in the description down below. And there's a link to BoardGameCaptain.com, which is a great hub for all things Board Game Captain. And Lynn and I have started doing some semi-regular blog posts over there. Link in the description down below. Alright, so the Alien, the role-playing game, Colonial Marines, Operations Manual. What is in here when you get this? So, start out, you got the map of the known colonial universe. They call it Stars of the Middle Heavens in the inside cover. And then we get to the credits page, and I want to give a big credit where credit is due, and let you know the people who did all the work on this game. The lead writer was Andrew E.C. Gazka. The location design was done by Paul Elliott. The game director was Thomas Harenstam. The illustrations are by Martin Grip, Gustav Ekelund, Jarek Kubicki. The graphic design was by Christian Garnath. Vehicles and weapon art by Team Comfort and Adam. And then, of course, we've also got the editors. The map design, I'm going to put this all up on the screen. Editors were Thomas Harenstam, Dave Samark. Map design was done by Christian Granath, Paul Elliott, Andrew E.C. Gaska. Proofreading, additional writing. Lots of people worked on this game. I'll have it all up on the screen so you can see everybody who worked on this game. Then we get the table of contents. Now, if you're not familiar yet with the games in the Alien role-playing game line, you will notice that they are full-color printing with the star background on all the pages. This is normal for the books in the Alien, the role-playing game line, and with beautiful, beautiful artwork. So the first section is Welcome to the Core. So in the Welcome to the Core section, it goes over a lot of what to expect in a campaign based around being a Colonial Marine and what to expect the daily life of the Colonial Marines to be like. It's a fairly short section, only goes up to about page 13, and then you get up to a history section. So the history section goes over the history of the universe from about 2100 on to about 2210. It's a real nice overview to give you an idea of all the big events that went on in the history of the known universe, at least from the human perspective, and includes major conflicts as well as the discovery of alien species and the first sentient alien species, which are the Arcturians, which of course were briefly mentioned in the movie Aliens, and they actually go into a little bit more detail about what the Arcturians are like in this book, which is really cool. Then as you go through it, there is a huge amount of space dedicated to each of the major conflicts that involved the Colonial Marine Corps. Then we get up to the next section, which is Organization. Now, Organization is a section that goes over all the various power structures in the universe, things like the U.S. Colonial Marines. In the section going over the Colonial Marines, it goes over the full command structure, what it's like to be in a Marine unit, how the units are organized, etc. And then it goes into many other organizations and military structures. For instance, we have the United Americas Allied Command, UAAC, which commands all of the United Americas fleets. All of the American nations, North, South, and Central America, are united into a single political force. And even though the United States Colonial Marine Corps is the force that you're playing, there are other allied forces under the UAAC that you could wind up being allied with. For instance, the United States Aerospace Force, the Canadian Colonial Armed Forces, which are different from the Marines in that they are specifically ground pounders. Marines get more zero-G combat training. There's the Latin American Colonial Navy, the Outer Rim Defense Fleet, and the Colonial Marshal Bureau, which is kind of less of a military organization, more of a law enforcement organization. It's basically like cops out on the frontier. Very much like the movie Outland, starring Sean Connery, which is sort of related to Alien in that some of the same people worked on that movie, and there are some theories that it is actually in the same universe as the Alien movies. Then there is the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, which is still active, the United American Colonial Guard, the United States Colonial Coast Guard, and then next we have the forces of the Three World Empire. So the Three World Empire is a separate political faction that is allied with the UA, the United Americas, and they include descriptions of the Royal Marine Commandos, which are, of course, the British equivalent to the Colonial Marines, the Imperial Armed Space Forces, and then you get into the private mercenary militaries of some of the companies. So the Weyland-Yutani Commandos are literally corporate-run mercenaries. Then you have the Central Space Consortium private military contractors, and then we get into the UPP Collective. So the Union of Progressive Peoples is essentially the antagonists or enemies of the UA and the Three Worlds League, and this is very much an analogy to the Cold War based on when the old Alien movies were made. Of course, a lot of the stuff in there really was made during the Cold War on Earth, so that a lot of those themes did sneak into the movies. So in this case, the UPPA feels very much like the USSR, and it is made up of the USSR and a lot of its allied countries, but also countries that weren't really allied to it, because, for instance, China is now also in the UPP, even though at one point they were not. They have now joined. So that goes over their military organizations. They have the Union of Progressive People's Army, the Space Operating Forces, the Ministry of Space Security, etc. Okay, so once you get past that section where they go over all these different organizations, you know what all the acronyms stand for and know who these people are and what their allegiances are, you get to making Marines. So in making Marines, now, we already, of course, had character creation in the main Alien, the role-playing game book, but here we have some extra stuff specifically on making a group of Marines for a campaign rather than just a one-off. Now, you could do this with just the main book, but they give you some extra details in here. Some more specific military occupational specialties and other rules to help you to design your Marine and unit of Marines more in depth than you could from just the main book. Then we have a bunch of tables about random interesting events from your history to help you round out and flesh out your Marine character, and some new talents, final preparations, some information on ranks, and also, kind of talking about that. The rank doesn't really matter. If one player outranks the others, they're not really going to be bossing each other around. It's really just to make it more realistic, and so you know what the command structure is, when in reality, it's going to be more of a majority rule, because it's a role-playing game, and that's generally how you go. Then we get into some standard gear and such for the Marines. So now there was a ton of gear in the basic book, but this has a ton more. There's a bunch of more weapons in here, including some very specialized and interesting and experimental weapons, as well as old, not very common weapons, as well as a lot of weapons for the UPP, which is very interesting because there wasn't a huge amount for, you know, foreign weapons in the main book, you get a lot more equipment and weapons that are used by the enemies of the UA here, which is very cool. Then we also have the body armor for all of them and vehicles. So now for vehicles, there's a ton more vehicles in here. And again, a ton of vehicles for the UPP, including ground vehicles, both for the UA and UPP, as well as artillery and flying vehicles, drop ships. The UPP gets their own equivalents of the dropship and attack vehicles that the UA have, as well as their own big capital ships, space capital ships. And there's some really awesome illustrations of all these vehicles in here. I love that they came up with different capital ships for the UPP, so you didn't just have two Conestoga class vessels warring against each other. I mean, the UPP could have captured Conestoga class vessels, but now they have the Kremlin class ship, which is a great rival to the Conestoga class UA vehicle. They also have a new upgraded, newer model UA vehicle that is meant to replace the Conestoga class, which is the Bougainville class, which is really cool. Then we get into the Marine campaign. So in this section here, it goes over a lot of the information about running a campaign with Marines. It goes over a full exploration of the Tambatam, which is going to be the specific Conestoga class starship that you are going to be flying in during the campaign that is in this book. It goes into a lot of details on the command structure. And a lot of NPCs. There's a lot of NPCs in here. Really, really cool. How to use NPCs in combat, how to run a Marine campaign, how to run different sorts of scenarios, how to run different sorts of missions. All of it's in here. How to handle downtime. Really, really, really well thought out chapter. Lots of details. Gives you a lot more in-depth minutia than was in the basic Alien role-playing game book. I mean, these are things that you could have thought of on your own, but they came up with some really great answers to the things you could have thought of on your own, and maybe better than you would have thought of on your own. I mean, that's going to be up to you if you think it's better than what you would have thought of to do. But the next system is the systems and bases, where we go into a lot of the different areas of the galaxy, specific planets, specific star systems, descriptions of mining colonies, military bases, various terraformed or partially terraformed planets. Lots of places you are going to visit in this campaign or could visit in a campaign of your own devising. And this is really cool. I really enjoyed this section. I liked going over all of the various planets and settings that you could play in. Now, the next area is Black Projects. So the Black Projects section is I'm going to go a little spoiler free on this. I'm going to have to be a little cagey not to ruin this for you, because I don't want to ruin the cool stuff you will discover in playing out the campaign in this book, if you're planning to play out the campaign in the Colonial Marines Operations Manual. But this section goes over some, Black Ops, some operations that are going on from the various military powers that they're trying to keep under wraps, that they're trying to keep a secret, in some cases even from their own governments. Now, if you've read the Alien comic books from back in the day, I used to read some of them back in the 90s, some of these are going to be kind of familiar to you, because of course you know that the ideas they put forth about experimenting on using the aliens as biological weapons, talking about that in the movies, of course, became secret projects in the comic books and some of the novels. So, I mean, it's that sort of thing without going into too much detail. But there are other things, too, and some other surprises you may run into in regard to some of these particular operations that are being done by the UA and UPP. Now, the next section is the Frontier War. So the Frontier War, this is it. This is where it is going down. So you start with a full explanation of what's going on in the Frontier War, and then it goes over the various missions you will go on. So this is the campaign, make no mistake, and this is the largest section of the book, because basically from page 183 to page 352, that is all the campaign. There is a huge amount of information here. Information on how to run all of these various missions, maps of the various installations, planets, etc. that you will be visiting, lots of NPCs, lots of suggestions, and then I love, at the end of each one of these missions, there's a suggestion for how to run this mission as a standalone mission or to insert it into another campaign because, in case you don't want to run the campaign in here. But I mean, really what this is about is this book is about running a campaign that is included where your players are playing a unit of Colonial Marines. And that's really what this book is about, which is why such a large section of the book is devoted to a super involved, super in-depth campaign that I really like, that had some very interesting missions, some great reoccurring villains and NPCs, some nice twists and turns. I'm not going to spoil any of it here. But suffice to say, there's going to be a lot of combat, there's going to be a lot of mystery, there's going to be a lot of things to figure out, a lot of puzzles. Really, really cool campaign, a lot to do, and it very much feels like Aliens, the second movie in the Alien series. Obviously, this is based on the characters from the second movie in the Alien series, so it should be no surprise to you that that is what the feel of the campaign is like. Okay, so again, you get a bunch more material in this book. In fact, you could buy this if you don't even want to run the campaign. You don't need to run the campaign in here. You could run your own campaign of your own design and occasionally use one of the missions from the campaign in here as a standalone mission. There's instructions on how to do that with all of those. But in addition, there's a ton of more bits of equipment, vehicles, just materials in general, more information on creating Colonial Marines if you want to run a Colonial Marine campaign yourself. The campaign in here is meant to be run as a mini-series type campaign with a definite end where you run for approximately 7 sessions and then that's it. Which, in my opinion, the way to do the Alien the role-playing game is either to do a mini-series type campaign like that or to do a single standalone game. I don't think this game system lends itself as well to like just ongoing campaigns, but that's not really how it was intended to be used. It's really intended to be used in these mini-series campaigns that are like a single season of a television show, self-contained, or single self-contained horror games where everybody gets killed. But if you want to play as Marines, you obviously don't want to play as characters where most of you are going to get killed. You're going to have to get a new character really quickly. You're going to play as characters that can kick some butt. And I mean, that's what this is about. You're going to have, nice gear, high-tech weapons, lots of great stuff to help you fight against evil humans as well as the alien threat. And that is awesome. This book is absolutely fantastic. So when Free League Publishing announced that they were going to be doing the Colonial Marines Operations Manual, I was thinking to myself at first, I was like, well, they already kind of covered the Marines in the basic book, so it's obviously going to be more in-depth. And I thought, what would I put in there if I was making this book? Let's say I had a team of people to help me work on this. What kind of things would I put in here? And I started brainstorming, and I was like, well, more gear. Definitely want more vehicles. I definitely want, some missions, maybe some standalone games. I didn't think of doing a campaign because I was at the time very into the whole standalone games for the Alien role-playing game. So I was like, maybe some standalone games in here, things like that. Everything I thought of that would be great to put in here, they thought of also, and more. They thought of a lot more. And this book is fantastic. So again, this is a huge book, tons of content, full color printing, beautiful production, gorgeous artwork, old school thread binding, nice hardcover. The content is absolutely awesome. It's everything I wanted this book to be and more. If you can't tell that I'm gushing, I am in love with the Alien role-playing game. I have always been in love with the Alien property, and I am absolutely in love with the Alien role-playing game. I think this is one of the best ways to take an official IP and adapt it into a game. I think Free League has really hit it out of the chart here, both with the basic game and now with the Colonial Marines Operations Manual. I am going to give the Colonial Marines Operations Manual for Alien the Role-Playing Game 10 out of 10 stars. This book is phenomenal. If you have the Alien the Role-Playing Game and you are thinking of possibly running a Colonial Marines ongoing campaign for the Alien, the role-playing game, buy this book. Just do it. If you have the Alien, the role-playing game, and you want to get more details, more equipment, also buy this book. There's a ton of more stuff in here that you can use. Ready-made NPCs, some more ideas for standalone games, as well as more vehicles, just tons of stuff. And also, yeah, and then in the future, if you ever want to run a Marine campaign in general, you've got amazing amounts of details in here for that. This book is absolutely awesome. If you like the Alien, the role-playing game, you should get this for your collection. I don't like giving out 10s out of 10, but this book is phenomenal. It deserves it. When it deserves it, I got to do it. Buy this book. This is awesome. Yeah. I don't have anything else to say except that I love this book. So yeah, there you have it. If you enjoyed this review of a role-playing game product, and you'd like to see me do more like it, be sure to give this video a like, share it on all forms of social media, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on.